in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you so much for joining us. We are just days now, single-digit days away, right, from the NFL opener. And then, 11 days from Bengals Patriots, I think. I'm not great at math. I've got a journalism degree. Numbers, not my thing. However, we're getting close. This is the last weekend without any NFL football. It is a Wednesday when I'm recording this. We are getting there. The preseason is over. We're going to get into that. I've got a preseason game ball to give out. We'll talk about that a bit and what we saw there. And here we are. The Bengals got to 53 men on the active roster yesterday. And that's kind of not a solid statement because that could change. That could change before this podcast comes out. We'll find out. But for now, that 53 is set. And the big takeaway that I think everyone sees with this, the Bengals had all 10 draft picks. All 10 rookies that they drafted, 4 of whom came in around 6 and 7, are going to be on this roster on opening day. Plus 2 undrafted rookies. That's 23% of the 53-man roster. Nearly a quarter is rookies. The Bengals getting younger on this roster as some of those veteran guys we've come to know not getting any younger. The rest of the roster is. So interesting to see them go in that direction. Not really a lot of hard decisions, though, which is a good thing. That means they've put guys in position to succeed. They've drafted guys and brought in guys who are able to play. There are spots that you'd like to be better on this team, but there's no spot going into week 1 against New England, maybe other than punter, which we'll get to in a second, where you say, oh my God, this is bad. So I mentioned the 2 undrafted rookies who made the team. One is a guy we're going to talk about more in a minute, Muma Jungmeta. The undrafted linebacker out of Wisconsin brings an absolute boom. I think he was second in the preseason in tackles made across the NFL. Just an animal. Just all over the place. You couldn't leave him off the roster. That's an undrafted guy. From Wisconsin, too. It's not like he was some D2 guy who, slipped through the cracks. Big boy football in Madison, Wisconsin. Muma Jungmeta is now a Cincinnati Bengal on that opening day roster. Curious to see how much play he'll get. He'll definitely get in there on special teams. Is he a guy they bring in on short yardage situations? He brings the wood, man. They haven't really had a linebacker. Logan Wilson is awesome. Jermaine Pratt is awesome. I think we all love that linebacking duo. But they have not really had a linebacker since a guy who wore number 55 who really brings the wood in Vontaze Burfict. Now, Burfict had, personality-wise, probably the exact opposite of what we've seen out of Jungmeta so far. So, not to compare the two too much, Burfict was undrafted because of that personality. As to where Jungmeta, one way or another, I'm not an NFL draft expert, but slips through the cracks, and now he is a Cincinnati Bengal. The other undrafted rookie is Ryan Recco, who out of BYU, he's a punter. Brad Robbins, and we'll get to this too, the other big headlines from yesterday that we hear, Myles Murphy, last year's first-round pick as defensive end, he's going on the IR for 4 weeks, and Brad Robbins, last year's 6th-round pick, the punter out of Michigan, who was really not great. When you draft a punter, you expect them to be awesome. He was not. So Ryan Recco gets brought in the preseason to compete, rookie out of BYU. He didn't do great either, but Robbins on IR for 4 weeks with a hip flexor. So we'll see a rookie punter opening the season with the Bengals for the 2nd consecutive year. Hopefully this one goes a little better than what we saw last year out of Robbins. Hopefully Robbins comes back and is awesome. I do not understand. If you look at what he did at Michigan in college, he was a machine and somehow gets to Cincinnati and just can't punt the ball anymore. So hopefully some things turn around there. Just typically with punting, I don't know. You see in other areas where people really need to grow once they get to the NFL. Punting, unless I'm sure there's some things. Maybe the snaps come harder. I'm sure the defenders are obviously bigger, stronger, faster, but you're getting the ball and you're kicking it. I don't know what got so different. But at any rate, a lot of rookies on that Bengals opening day roster, and we will see, I'm sure, several of them play. The one who we're kind of curious now, so the Bengals have 2 short-term IR spots, 2 short-term injured reserve spots, meaning these guys are out for 4 weeks, and they can be replaced on the roster. Myles Murphy is one of those, the defensive end who the Bengals will need this year. That is a big hit, not having him the first month, and Brad Robbins, the punter we just talked about. The guy who didn't land on that IR is maybe the biggest story. The first-round pick, Amarius Mims, the right tackle who has a pectoral issue, a little chest muscle problems going on there, which when you're that big of a man, like I've said before, you're going to get some bumps and bruises because your body just doesn't even make sense to have a body like that. That is my medical take on that one. But Amarius Mims doesn't land on the IR, so maybe that means maybe we see him week 1. I would not bet on that, but maybe week 2 in Kansas City, maybe week 3 when the Bengals get an extra day of rest before Washington comes to Cincinnati. We'll see. But I think Amarius Mims not being on the injured reserve is a big deal. That means the Bengals think he can play in that first month, and if not, your backup option is the right tackle Trent Brown, who is the oldest fella on that offensive line and is a monster himself. So we'll see what happens there, but those are the biggest headlines out of that 53-man roster that we learned about on Tuesday, right? A lot of rookies on the team, Amarius Mims not on IR, and then the punter news. So punter, suddenly, it's funny, you finally, after years and years and years of Kevin Huber just being, I don't know what the word is, kind of just the standard in Cincinnati. You knew what you were getting out of him year in and year out. Finally, the Bengals put this roster together. It's a Super Bowl contender, and punter is a bit of an issue. So hopefully they get past it. Hopefully one of these two rookies can come out and get the job done. You don't have to be great. You just have to be decent. No more of those 28-yard shanks that we saw a handful of in the preseason. So the biggest cut, of course, came last week in the second-round pick of 2021, Jackson Carman. No more wanting to scratch your eyeballs out of your face watching his feet stand in concrete. I hope he figures some things out, but man, what a bust of a draft pick he was, 46th overall in 2021, and just did not work out. Bengals finally get rid of him. We don't have to worry about that anymore, and we'll see. I don't know. I said early on in this podcast, I think at the second episode, I thought he would make the roster. Now he doesn't, and a lot of that, something else I said in that same podcast, in that same little rant, was that the Bengals needed someone unsuspecting to come along and bump him, and that's what happened. Jackson Kirkland, a second-year undrafted rookie out of Washington, now in the Big Ten, he comes along, takes that roster spot, and kudos to the Bengals coaching staff for doing that. As much as it's easy for me and everyone else to sit around and say, good God, what were they doing taking Jackson Carman at 46th? They also deserve some credit for bringing a guy in Jackson Kirkland, undrafted out of Washington. And look, it's the preseason. You don't want to see him out there in the regular season. But if you do, you feel a hell of a lot better than you did with Jackson Carman. So the staff takes him and puts him in a position to where he looks like he could be a really solid backup tackle in the NFL at this point. We'll see what happens, but he comes along and bumps Carman. Carman's got some work to do if he wants to stay in the NFL. But like I said, Cedric Ogbuehi stayed in the league for another few years. Bobby Hart has like 98 NFL starts in his career, game starts, I don't know. He's appeared in nearly 100 games. So tackle play, offensive line play in general, difficult to come across in the NFL. So if Jackson Carman's still on a roster, sometime in week 4 when someone has a bunch of O-line injuries, don't be surprised. I saw an article from a Browns site that said that Cleveland should maybe consider picking him up. I'm not against that idea whatsoever. So that's where we are. We don't have to talk about him anymore as he is no longer a Cincinnati Bengal. The other guy from the 2021 draft class who got cut on that offensive line was Trey Hill. He was the Bengals' 6th-round pick at 190 in 2021. So 2021, they know they need help on that O-line, right? They're coming off Joe's rookie year where he has the knee injury against Washington. So they know they need to get him help. They get Jamar in round 1. So then in round 2, they take Jackson Carman. In round 4, Deontay Smith, who has an injury where he's out for the season. He looked like a solid backup guy himself. They took him at 139. Then Trey Hill, the 6th-round pick at 190. Bengals knew they had to load up on the offensive line to protect Joe Burrow, and none of those guys are going to work out. Carman's done. Trey Hill's done. Deontay Smith with a knee injury. He could very well be done in Cincinnati as well. So unfortunate. The good news is they got 2 Bengals for life probably in that draft, and a fella named Jamar Chase and a man with a leg named Evan McPherson. But on the O-line, just a rough 2021 draft class. They seem to be learning from their mistakes, going after different styles of players now on the O-line. Guys who are a little more fit, can move a little more. So it's all about growth. As a certain New England Patriots coach used to say, progress, not perfection. His name's Bill Belichick, and we're actually going to talk about him and the Patriots a little more relating to the Bengals in Week 1 at the end of the show. We'll save that for One for the Road. And also, to defend the Bengals a little more, as bad as that 2021 draft class was, the next offseason, they say, screw the draft. They go out, they get Teddy Karras at center, they get Alex Kappa to play left guard, and they draft Cordell Volson to play right guard. And he's a fourth-round guy who worked out and is solid up there. So, take the good with the bad. It's easy. We all want to sit around and harp on the bad, and with the offensive line, there's certainly more bad to talk about than good. But it's not like the Bengals are just sitting back and letting, the same guys who stink continuously run out there. So they're making progress. So that's where we're at with the 53. I mentioned it can change. The big name who people are talking about it changing would be Samaje Perine, who, of course, played a vital role on that, on both, the Bengals team in 2021 and 2022, the Super Bowl team, and then the team that got back to the AFC Championship. So he got cut by the Denver Broncos. So the question would be, and I think Paul Daniel Jr. of The Athletic a few weeks ago is the first guy I saw bring this up, that if he doesn't make it in Denver, would he want to come back to Cincinnati? My question is, and now everyone's on this train, which is fine. That's the way it works when you got top beat guys bringing up a potential reunion. My big question would be, we've got Chase Brown. Zach Moss is back there. Does Samaje Perine want to be? What's the role there for him? I don't know that in this Bengals offense you can call anyone a number 1 or number 2, or if Samaje is in there, number 3 running back. Right now, Travion Williams clearly the number 3 running back, and Moss and Brown, whatever you want to say, we'll find out a month into the season who the true number 1 is, or if there is a true number 1. But is Samaje Perine, what's the market for him? I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of running backs out there whose names we know, who 2-3 years ago were really strong players, who now all of a sudden are looking for jobs. Samaje Perine, if you look at the list, is atop that list, I think. And, of course, he's comfortable with Joe Burrow. He's comfortable with Zach Taylor. He seemed to be a well-liked, loved guy in that locker room, and it would make sense for him to come back. My question would be, would he be okay? Before, he was playing second fiddle to Joe Mixon, and he got a lot of stage time in that second fiddle. I don't know that that'll be the case anymore. He's older. They're younger. We'll see what happens. But that 53-man roster could change if Samaje ends up back in stripes. And there are some other guys out there who we could see in Cincinnati as well. So for right now, most of this roster is set. We'll see what will happen. And look, there's guys on this roster right now we don't know much about who are going to play vital snaps as we get into the season. So just kind of fun to keep an eye on those guys, and we'll see what happens. I mentioned as if I came up with it, the preseason is over. I decide when it's over. No, it is over. Thank God. Like every year, week 1, we're like, my God, it's a preseason. Let's go. By the end of it, you're like, can we get through this thing already? And that we have. I caused a little bit of a stir up apparently yesterday on the old Twitter machine. And I asked who would get the Bengals preseason game ball. My options were Jackson Kirkland, who we mentioned, who didn't really shine. But again, I think if you get a backup left tackle, given this Bengals injury history, and bumping Jackson Carman, a perennial headache from the roster, I think he was worthy of being in there. My other option, Matt Lee, 7th-round center, who just balled out, took that backup center role and stole it away from Trey Hill. No doubt about that one. Josh Newton, the 5th-round quarterback out of TCU, who was awesome, blanketed DJ Moore in Chicago in that second game. And then the 4th option I gave, who I believe ended up winning the poll, he did, was Muma Jungmeta, who we mentioned earlier, who the undrafted guy, the undrafted guy out of Wisconsin, the linebacker who made this roster. So in order, I got 558 votes. If you tuned in, thanks for voting. I'm at Matt Edwards on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Muma Jungmeta gets 48% of the vote. Matt Lee at 44%, and then Josh Newton gets 6%. Jackson Kirkland gets just 2%. However, some people were not happy that I did not include Jermaine Burton on this list, and he is certainly worthy of being the guy who gets the game ball, which, by the way, this is a stupid Just a little fun thing. I don't want to call it stupid. It's fun. It's what we do. It's sports, right? It's the preseason. Meaningless. Even more meaningless than the preseason, a preseason game ball from me. However, it's fun to talk about. Who was the player who impressed you most? Who were the player you were happiest with coming out of the preseason? And if you want to say Jermaine Burton, that's absolutely fine. My reason I didn't include him on the list is A, X only allows for 4 spots on that list, so there were other guys. Dax Hill was also someone who came to mind. But Jermaine Burton didn't make it for me because he was a first-round talent. Like, I know he went in the 3rd round, but it's consensus that he's a top 40, top 50 pick, if not top 30, if not for his personality issues, we'll call them. As to where the rest of the guys, there are no expectations. 2 of the guys I put on there, undrafted. One of the guys, a 7th-round pick. The other guy, a 5th-round pick. So, to me, the expectations are different. Jermaine Burton, to me, beating up on roster bubble guys when he's a first-round talent is not as impressive as a 7th-round pick in Matt Lee or an undrafted guy like Muma Jungmeta going out there and just kicking the crap out of everyone they line up against. So if you want to go with Burton, that's fine. Again, none of this matters. It's just kind of a fun discussion. But you can make the case for all those guys, I think. But at the end of the day, like, I'm excited about Jermaine Burton. I hope all 5 of these guys end up in Canton one day. I hope the entire Bengals roster just takes over the Hall of Fame one day from like 2036 to 2048. I hope it's nothing but Bengals in that stretch. That would be awesome. I'm rooting for every single one of these guys. If you're watching on YouTube, you can tell I like this team. I want them to do well. However, to me, a guy with first-round talent beating up on roster bubble guys, that's what we expected him. That's what I expected him to do. That's where the expectation is for me. I've got high expectations for this guy. I think it's very possible that a year from now, he's the number 2 receiver on this team behind Jamar Chase. I think that's why the Bengals drafted him. But to me, expectations matter, and Muma Jungmeta coming from undrafted to a guy who makes the roster in a very good linebacker room, by the way. Pretty impressive. So there were no wrong answers, just a fun little thing. But we're going to do game balls throughout the season and for every game. And to me, the game ball for this preseason goes to Muma Jungmeta, the undrafted linebacker out of Wisconsin. So we have that. We are, as I mentioned, let's see, today is Wednesday, August 28th. And by the way, I said today is the day I would worry if a fella named Jamar Chase was not practicing yet. He's practicing this week. He was always going to practice, and I get why he didn't. I mean, there has never been a more amicable hold-in in the history of the league. If there is, we don't know about it. But Jamar is not practicing, presumably because he wants a new contract, but he's still doing photo shoots with the team. He's still hanging out, laughing on the sidelines, celebrating guys like Jermaine Burton. And here we are. He's practicing. Zach Taylor said on Tuesday he's going to play week 1. We're in good shape. Crisis averted, right? So we'll see. I still don't think he gets a contract. Maybe, like with the Burrow contract last year, they announce it just ahead of that Thursday night game. I don't see that happening. We'll wait and see. Either way, Jamar Chase is going to get the deal. I don't think we need to worry about Jamar Chase not being in stripes 2 years from now. So we'll be all right. Don't stress out about that. We are 8 days from the AFC Championship rematch that will open the 2024 season as the Baltimore Ravens travel to Kansas City to take on the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. It's just disgusting to even say that. I apologize that I put that in your ears, but we'll see if it'll change this year. Look, man, the AFC's tough. It really is. I mean, you got those 2 teams alone. Baltimore, I was going back and looking at that AFC Championship game from last year again. I mean, Baltimore could have easily won that game. Mahomes just had to go insane a few times. And I think there was it Zay Flowers with the fumble? Baltimore could have won that game. We'll see. Things change from year to year. They obviously lose their defensive coordinator. I think he took a couple assistants with them. And they're just still loaded, though. They're kind of like the Bengals. If their quarterback stays healthy, no doubt a Super Bowl contender. So we'll see what happens there. 11 days from the Bengals opener. Bengals, by the way, according to ESPN Bet, are the biggest favorite to win in Week 1. They are a 9-point favorite. They're the only 2-score favorite in the NFL. They are a 9-point favorite over the New England Patriots. The second biggest favorite, the Buffalo Bills, who host Arizona in week 1. So Vegas likes the Bengals. I like the Bengals. You like the Bengals. We all like the Bengals. We don't know who will start at quarterback for the Patriots. Looking like Drake May is going to be in line to do that. By the way, if you are listening right now, you should check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@. You got to do the little @ sign on YouTube, In the Jungle Pod. So youtube.com/@ In the Jungle Pod, just to see the shirt I'm wearing, because it's pretty sweet. I'll put that out there on Twitter too, @Matt Edwards. Let's get into one for the road. Let's do it up here. This is something I put out there when the Bengals schedule came out, but I think it's pretty cool. It's just, and maybe it's one of those things that only I'm into. So the Bengals, as I mentioned, 11 days from now, open the season against the New England Patriots. This will be New England's first game without Bill Belichick since he became head coach there in, I believe, 2000, somewhere around there, late 90s, early 2000. At any rate, more than 2 decades. The Patriots' first game, or last game, I should say, without Tom Brady, was the Week 1 opener in 2001. The Bengals beat the Patriots in that game, I think. Let me double check that. At any rate, the next week, I've got it pulled up right here. I know they played each other. Yeah, the Bengals beat the Patriots in Week 1, September 9th, 2001. The Patriots go on to win the Super Bowl this year, by the way. Bengals beat the Patriots by a final score of 23-17. God, you had Tony McGee catching a touchdown pass from John Kitna. You had Corey Dillon punching one in. Neil Rackers kicking field goals. At any rate, Week 1 of 2001, the Bengals defeat the New England Patriots. The following week, the Patriots are playing the Jets. Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. Very bad injury. He's actually in the hospital for a few days. And a fella named Tom Brady comes in and takes over. Tom Brady never gave that job back, as you all know. So the last game before Tom Brady takes over, the Bengals play the Patriots. The first game without Bill Belichick, the Bengals play the Patriots. Just kind of a fun little factoid that I thought was interesting, that the Bengals kind of bookend that era of Patriots football, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're considered one of those teams who will probably be picking in the top 10 again. If you're betting on 3, 4, maybe 5 teams to pick in the top 10, New England is going to be one of those teams. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. They're not going to do what the Texans did last year. They're in a tough division, which has, 2 playoff teams from last year and another team that has Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So going to be tough times ahead for the New England Patriots, it looks like, but we'll see. We never see. A lot of people probably would have said that about the Texans this time last year, and now I've got a lot of people think they're the favorite to win the AFC. Or not necessarily the favorite, but people are picking them. It does help they play in the AFC South, which stinks to high heavens, but a lot of people like what they've got going on, kind of reminiscent of that 2021 Bengals team, I think, in a lot of people's minds. So we'll see what happens there. I did have my annual Super Bowl dream last night. I swear to God this is true. Within a week, 7 to 10 days, because it is 8 days, of the NFL season starting every single year, I have a dream of who's going to be in the Super Bowl. It's not like I plan this. It's not like I have a talk. I forget that it happens, but it happens every year. Last night, I had a dream that it was the Detroit Lions taking on the Miami Dolphins. I can't remember many of the opponents I've had in the past, but I know they've never been right, or I would remember it. And so sorry to those 2 teams. You're not going to make the Super Bowl. But yeah, literally my body just kind of knows. Football's coming up. Let's have the dream. Who are we going to cook up here? I don't know who won, by the way. That did not occur in the dream. No one hoisted that Lombardi. So yeah, there's that. That's the last time I'll talk about my dreams on this podcast, I promise you. All right, let's wrap this one up. The show is called In the Jungle. My name is Matt Edwards. If you like it, please tell a friend about it. Please rate it, subscribe, or just keep watching. What do I have to ask out of you? You guys are doing enough just by being here this late in the show already. Do appreciate you tuning in, and we're going to do it. So here's how it's going to work for the rest of the season. Today, so Monday, so this Tuesday, so the shows are going to come out on Monday mornings and Friday mornings. Monday mornings will kind of be the wrap-up of what happened on Sunday, and of course that'll change when they play Monday nights and Thursday night games. And Fridays will kind of be the weekend ahead and what's going on in the NFL. These will obviously kind of shift around when the Bengals play Monday night games, Thursday night games, but I promise we'll get them done. We'll be consistent with how they come out and get them out there on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. So be sure to tune in. The next episode after today is actually going to come out on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I'm going to do my annual predict all the playoff teams and Super Bowl winners. So tune in for that one. And then the next one will be Friday as we preview what's going on with New England in week 1. And I'm looking forward to that, man. This is going to be, I'm happy to be back in the mix. This is the 3rd season doing this, and it's fun. Fun to talk about the NFL, fun to have people tune in and call in, or not call in, text in and tweet in and all that fun stuff. So, again, it's In the Jungle. Give it a subscribe, give it a like, do what you want to do. I don't really care. We'll keep doing it either way. My name is Matt Edwards. We will see you again on Tuesday for that big prediction show. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be 100% accurate. All 14-team playoff teams, all 2 Super Bowl contenders, or all 2, what's the word there? All 2 Super Bowl participants, all 2 of them. And the winner as well. Going to get them all right. So, all right. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you on Tuesday. It's In the Jungle.